I am living in London at the moment to enable me to do some work which I'm very, very passionate about, which involves running an organisation which is called We Are What We Do, which is trying to affect world change, which sounds very big and grand, but basically involves trying to get people to think about the simple things they do every day of their life and how they could do them in such a way that they could have a positive impact on the environment, on other people, on some of the big issues which we all confront. And we've published a couple of books that have been hugely successful. The book is called Change the World for a Fiver, and it was published in September 2004. And it's been a huge seller, been published in Australia, an Australian edition called Change the World for $10, and in Germany, in Canada, and in Holland next year. And then a second book, Change the World 9 to 5. So that's the book, but then there's a website and there's an education program and a community program. It's very it's a large beast, and it comes together as a result of companies and government bodies and individuals and schools all contributing. So it's an extraordinary thing that we've created to manifest that idea, and I manage it. You know, London's a bitch. There's no two ways about it. I really, really hate it. In many, many ways. I hate that it's so hard to get to and from. I hate all the things that any Australian will tell you. I hate that you can't get to see the doctor when you want to, although when you do it's free and actually it's quite a good service. I hate that it's so hard to open a bank account. I hate that to see your friends involves, you know, a 2.5-hour journey across the town from one side to the other. I hate all that. But I love that it is so exciting, it's so fast-paced, that if you're working in London, you'll be working with the very, very best people. And that, if you're interested in doing interesting things and your career is important to you, that is about as exhilarating as life gets. I mean, there have been times when I have said to myself, all the good ones get out, you know, and certainly when I was first here, I was almost more excited by the fantastic Australians I was meeting in London, and a bit irritated too, because you meet so many. But I was very excited by the great Australians I was meeting in London. And I did have moments when I thought, where were these guys when I was in Australia? Because if I was bumping into these kind of people, I might have stayed. So I do feel that there is a sense of a concentration of the good ones getting out. But I say that very, very quickly, that I do think there are good ones back home as well. Sometimes I wonder if there isn't a kind of masochistic streak in the Australians who live here. I do think that there is a little bit. Sometimes I say to myself, you know, it really doesn't have to be like this, and it is really quite painful at the moment. And there are a lot of things which are, you know, which could make this a lot easier, like your old friends around you, your family around you, you know, a few days of sunshine could make all this a lot easier, and you're choosing to be away from it. Now, I do certainly question what that means about me as a person. You can come to London and you can throw yourself into your life and your career, and you can do so comfortably, because if you fail and it all goes belly up, the worst thing that's going to happen to you or to me or whoever is you're going to get back on a 747 and you're going to go back to God's own country. And I think that position is an incredibly powerful position in relationships, in business, in life in general. So to know that the worst case is, you know, Sydney Harbour for the rest of your life, it's not the end of the world. I didn't have a eureka moment. I had more of a eureka period. Sort of a number of things came together in a sort of 3 or 4 month period, and they were to do with finishing a big job. You know, when you feel you've come to the end of a piece of work. I'd worked for a company for 3 years and I'd pretty much burnt out. I had just to carry the burn metaphor on, I had a British passport which had been burning a hole in my pocket for about 10 years, and I really did think, I am a great believer, if you have opportunities in life, you know, you're mad if you don't grab them. So I just had always thought at some point I wanted to use that British passport, and I was running away from a relationship. I mean, I would say 7 out of 10 Australians that you ask that question to would say they were running away from some kind of relationship potentially. And I think also, and I think again pretty much everyone would say this, I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to reinvent myself. I wanted to be someone different. I didn't know who that was. I didn't know how to go about it. You know, when I left Australia I was 30. I mean, I absolutely don't want to big myself up, but I had in my own small world a reasonable profile and I was well known, and I just couldn't work out how to change that radically when I had this sort of sense that people around me wouldn't sort of accept me being different, which is total bollocks. They couldn't give a shit. But that was my perception, you know. So I just, all those things came together, and I turned 30 and I jumped on a plane and I got out of there. It was to do with Australia insofar as I wanted to reinvent myself, and I didn't feel I could there, where I felt everybody was watching me, and it felt small, it felt claustrophobic. I didn't feel there was a possibility to go and try new things and fail and be anonymous in the way you want to when you're starting again. So it was to do with Australia, and I'm ambitious, I suppose, is the other thing. You know, I think you get to a point where you realise that if you want to do anything on any kind of scale, which I really, really did and do, there is a limit to your ability to deliver that scale when you're working in a country with such a small population relative to its land size, with such a distance between it and Europe and it and the States, and such cultural differences between its nearest neighbours that you were going to be having to get over some pretty big hurdles there if you wanted to try and do something in partnership there. So I just wanted to be at the centre of things, and it just felt that with a passport and the opportunity that England or London would put me more at the centre of things and give me more opportunity. And when I got here, and I say this to this day, when I walk along the pavements in London, I think I can, the smell of opportunity. I can feel it every time my foot goes down. I think there's opportunity, there's opportunity. I feel it so keenly, and that excites me so much. And when I was walking along in Sydney, I just think, when I was looking at the pavements, there's a girl with better legs than me. Get me out. I think there are two reasons that we travel. One is that we are adventurers inherently. My family all came to Australia, my grandparents and my great uncles and all the generations 3 and 4 above me came over on a boat with legendary stories of how little they had. Started droving sheep, bought a little pocket of land, bought another little pocket of land, married someone, had some kids, bought a bigger pocket of land, and then did, set up a factory, and then, these extraordinary stories in my own family, and they're not special or unique. And I think we have a sense of adventure which is inherent in us. I mean, I like to think of, my great-great-grandfather bringing herds of cattle across the country, literally from one side to the other. I mean, this is sort of extraordinary adventurous spirit. Just get out there and do it. And to me, that is in me and is in my mother and father. And, we are adventurers. And I think, secondly, the reason we travel is quite simply to do with the fact that we so frequently have relations who are in England, or, like the cab driver no doubt came over to see his uncle or his aunt, or had an opportunity to go and stay with someone. And it's to do with the way our population is made up. We are made up of many thousands and millions of migrants, and it's only natural that at some stage, that if you have the possibility, there is a curiosity to go back and trace those roots. So that's what I think it is. It's a sense of adventure, coupled with a sense of possibility, because there is a destination or a reason to go. There's a fantastic book by Michael Blakemore, his autobiography, and he is Australian, but he's lived over in England for the last 50 years, 60 years, had a fantastic career, very successful stage director. And in his book, he talks about how his mother, his mother was English and she'd married an Australian man, and so her sister was English, and there was always a sense of coming back to the motherland. And I do think there is quite a lot of that, not so much for our generation, but for my mother and grandmother. There was a sense of touching base with, I think Australians do feel of that generation there's a sense of poor cousin to, the proper English relatives. So I think that sense of going back and touching base, just to hold on to that thing, which for them, as British citizens coming to Australia, is very much who they are. We cannot underestimate the importance of the 2000 Olympic Games on current Australia. I think for the first time Australia was on the world stage on a scale it had never been over a sustained period of times, and behind the Olympics was a whole campaign of volunteering and getting Australia to be the most beautiful place, and all these employment opportunities, and all this, the media coming and falling in love with Australia. I mean, it was almost hysterical, this whole thing that happened, and everyone who came loved Australia. So this Australian thing was sort of legitimised, to the point when I go back now and you get off the plane and you get, "G'day mate, how are you? Oh, welcome back," and all that. It's like, where did this come from? It used to be like this. I mean, I don't have cultural cringe, but when it's kind of magnified to the point where, it's almost a caricature of itself. It's like people don't watch Dame Edna Everage anymore as a sort of, study in sort of sending ourselves up. It's like, here's the how-to. Be Australian, and they're taking it all on. And I do think it's the fireworks factor. It's gone nuts. Everything's got to be big and exciting and clean and new, and we're nervous about controversy, and we're nervous, let's go and be friends with America, and let's do fireworks, and let's You know, let's be these big players on the international stage. And I mean, of course, why shouldn't we be? But when it's founded on a sort of sense of Australianness, which I think is pretty superficial, I think it's a shame. I think the popular perception of Australia at the moment is choking other areas of the country, artistic and cultural particularly, political changes. It seems to be this sort of heavy cloud that's, well, a bright, fluffy, white nimbus cloud in true Australian style, but that is sitting above the country and not letting other stuff come through or emerge. And I mean, I don't want to sort of start to be an intellectual snob, and I think it's dangerous from London to start sort of projecting back and saying, you know, oh, if you know, the Steve Irwins and the Shane Warnes weren't around, Australia would be a cultured, better, you know, place, and I'd go back. Because I think those characters can be found in pretty much any culture, those sort of larger-than-life sort of people that epitomise some of the characteristics of a culture. I think maybe something that's happened is the media's gone a bit mad in Australia, and it's part of this kind of legitimisation of this Australian way of life means that these people are becoming these heroes, and then they're sort of raised up to these higher than imaginable levels, and then that just perpetuates that fluffy nimbus cloud factor that's stifling everything else. I don't know, I think that my mum, if she was sitting here, would say, well, what do you expect when people like me and all of my colleagues who think about these things and who allegedly care about them bugger off and go and live in London? So what do you expect? So I think there is a danger in sort of saying, yes, it would be different, and yes, there are all these people who are artistic and cultural who want to do these things. But if they've all buggered off to London, what chance is there? I don't feel guilty to Australia because I'm taking my talents and skills away. I feel guilty to my family and my friends, particularly my family, because I think it is a really difficult thing to have a member of your family living on the other side of the world. And I do often question, you know, my ambition versus my commitment to my family. And I come down every time thinking one's job is to fulfil oneself, and that's what your family want you to do. And so I'm doing that. But it's a struggle, and I would defy anyone who's living here and has family, or living anywhere with their family on the other side of the world, not to say that they don't consider at some stage, my family are paying a price for the choices I'm making. And you do have to think about that. For me, going back to Australia at some stage is by no means a cop-out. It'll be the right thing to do when and if I do it. Different things fulfill you at different times in your life. When I was 30, 33, 34, you know, I'm not much older now, the thing that fulfills me is doing some incredibly exciting work, meeting an English person, getting married and living an English life. It's incredibly fulfilling. But I promise you, in 5 or 6 years' time, my work, my family life in this country will all be secondary to my fulfilment from spending time with my parents, who will be, by that stage, quite elderly. And no achievement on this planet will equal the fulfilment of having the opportunity, God willing, to have some time with them. The thing I really miss, and not a day goes by when I don't miss her so much, is my sister. I love my sister to bits, and she has 3 children, and yeah, it's just a terrible, terrible thing. And I question myself all the time about it, and my mum and my dad. So it's terrible. After that, my friends, I've never made friends in this country which as close as the friends I have in Australia, which is to do with my best friends, the people I made really when I was at university, at a time when I think you're very open to friendship, and I think as time goes on, you know, the nature of friendship changes, which doesn't mean I've not got lots of lovely friends, but I miss my friends. But really, the one thing that every day I just feel sick about is my sister, because I just love her to bits, and it's the weirdest thing not to live in the same country as her.